This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA Pacifica Radio, and I'm at a trial today of Kathleen Carroll, who is suing the state of California for her termination at the Commission on Teacher Credentialing because of whistleblowing on her part. This is her lawyer, Dan Siegel.
This Commission on Teacher Credentialing is supposed to protect our children from teachers who may have problems keeping their hands off them or have substance abuse problems and so on. And when Kathy went to work for this commission, she realized they were not doing their jobs and that there were huge backlogs of work and that they were people who shouldn't be in the classroom, who weren't facing proceedings to have their credentials revoked or suspended. Ultimately, after trying to deal with these issues for several months, she went to the Bureau of State Audits, which did an audit and confirmed every single one of her charges as being accurate, and the entire leadership of the commission was fired or had to resign. Nonetheless, Kathy paid the price for all this, and she was terminated from her employment and has now filed suit. And the mudslinging continues. It's really disgusting what this state defendant is doing to try to discredit someone who heroically put themselves on the line to protect all of our families. Today, we had the most tawdry story I've heard in a courtroom where Kathy was accused of sexual harassment by a person, a woman, who admits that Kathy never made a sexual proposition to her, never touched her, never tried to kiss her, never talked to her about having any kind of romantic or sexual relationship. Yet the state puts this witness on the stand and charges Kathy with sexual harassment simply because Kathy tried to do a good job by sending this woman emails and telephoning her to explain how to do her job as a member of the Committee on Credentials.
Well, one of the issues that came up today was that apparently this big investigation of Kathy took place after they found out she was interested in doing an audit. Is that surprising to you that after the call for the audit, the state audit, that they would start to do this personal investigation of Kathy?
You know, there's no doubt about that's what they did. And of course, when we filed suit, and for months and even years afterwards, they denied that the disciplinary action against Kathy had anything to do with her whistleblowing, and in fact denied they even knew that she had been the whistleblower. But as a result of discovery in the case and talking with people and obtaining documents and so on, we realized that she had been fingered by the people at this commission at every stage of the way. They understood in January of 2010 that she was complaining about the backlog. They understood in April or May of 2010 that she was complaining to the Bureau of State Audits. We learned also that the internal investigation, which the commission claimed to be doing of the backlog, turned into very quickly an investigation of Kathy. And various witnesses have had to concede that on the stand as they went in supposedly to talk about the backlog. And for example, the witness who testified today, Barbara Kilponen, said that she, in March of 2010, went in to be interviewed by this so-called investigator, and within minutes was asked by this investigator, well, now tell me about the Stalker. Which was, of course, an invitation to her to talk about Kathy Carroll and to make these absurd claims of sexual harassment.
Now, the state of California has spent millions of dollars, Department of Justice, Attorney General, the governor, to prevent this even from coming to trial. And what does it say about the protection of whistleblowers in state government and public employees who want to protect the public, and if they do try to solve some of the problems, corruption, potential corruption, this is what happens to them. Why should anybody come forward and be a whistleblower?
Well, Steve, that's a damn good question, you know. This is actually a negative lesson for whistleblowers. Kathy Carroll's a very ethical person whose DNA includes doing the right thing, and she's always in her life tried to do the right thing. But she has suffered horribly because of her bravery in coming forward. She hasn't had a job for 6 years because every time she applies for work, the question is, why did you leave your job with the state? I was fired. Why were you fired? I was fired for blowing the whistle. A lot of people treat her as radioactive, so she's had to live really in abject poverty for years, scared about where she's going to get money for food, not able to afford to keep the heat on in her house. She has a car in front of her house that she hasn't driven for years because she can't maintain it. So the lesson that the great state of California wants everyone to hear in a case like this is if you come upon wrongdoing or misconduct at your place of work, keep it to yourself.
And after leaving the commission, Kathy began to investigate the connection, financial connection, the privatizers, charters, and the whole privatization that is now going on in the schools. You think this issue has anything to be connected with about what's happening in education today in California?
Well, I think there are some connections. Part of the problems that she looked at the commission were that a lot of the people involved in various appointed positions there had connections to the for-profit education industry, to charter schools and so on. And perhaps this explains part of the commission's unwillingness or failure to address some of the concerns that she was concerned about. If you don't care about public schools, I guess you don't care about child molesters or drug abusers teaching in the public schools.
And what can people do who want to help Kathy and other whistleblowers in this kind of dire situation, it seems, for those who do speak out?
Well, I think that, like everything else we always talk about, this issue is one issue and a big agenda for progressive change in this society. Unless you can overturn the leadership of the state of California, you're not going to have state agencies that are really responsive to people's needs. I mean, let's face it, the governor appoints this commission that runs this agency, and the commission itself hires the executive director. And what we've heard in this trial is that the commissioners themselves have had zero interest in doing anything about the problems that Kathy exposed. So then the question is, well, who is the governor? What interest does he serve? And how are they connected to the power structure in this state? Which, of course, is, not to go too far into it, but a flip side of what we're seeing at the national level. We have a choice between a proto-fascist who relies on racism and anti-immigrant rhetoric to get people riled up against diversity, against women, against gays and lesbians. And then the choice is a favorite of Wall Street who promises nothing but perhaps a little softer version of the same rule.
Okay, thank you.
All right.